morning, everyone. Welcome to Khenpo Tsulnam Rinpoche. This morning we will be having part 2 of the Milerapa teaching on the poem of Milerapa, and this afternoon will be the Akshobhya empowerment at 2 p.m. While I remember, can I ask everyone to please turn off your cell phones? This morning, at the end of the teaching, Rinpoche has kindly agreed to have a question and answer period. So anybody that has any questions whatsoever about the Dharma, about their practice, anything, would be able to do that then. Thank you very much. And I would like to welcome Rinpoche. Thank you. Oh yes. Thank you, Rinpoche, and for being here today.
So first I'd like to say welcome and tashi delay to everyone. Then that number was of Gumba to be Woma Gone, that's a Shena Senate in the Zedam Jebzuri. Then that Woma is young to sort of Mambuji Yuri, Masoyang, Top Deo, on it. There's a Masotu Tundon and Tsayaki. That in the petit, that is a Milerapa is something about Omatango de Yasares and what that is in Kazamango to win.
So, previously, I was requested to give some teachings about the middle way philosophy, and generally, there are a great many texts on the Madhyamaka or middle way philosophy, and so it was decided then that we should use a text which is something convenient that we can finish in a short amount of time, and so it was decided that it would be best if we studied then this spiritual song of the middle way by Milerapa.
Today, the woman that was in the number Sanjibala, Tontanawa Jay, and Tuba Chumala, Sedanawa, and Dodeva Ni. Tukwa Chimbola Sanzam by the woman but need that from that Jay Baganan, Tangoki, from that number Sanji Bag, the Tawa Tushu, there and that woman Tawa the child by mother.
So, generally, what we call the view of the Madhyamaka is the highest of the four, what we call philosophical systems of Buddhism. So, in Buddhism, we have four systems, which we call the two of the Hinayana, or of the lesser vehicle, which are called the Vaibhashika and the Swatantrika, and then the two of the Mahayana tradition, which are the mind-only or Chittamatra school, and the Madhyamaka or middle way school. And so we are studying the last and highest view of those, which is this middle way philosophy. And the views that are spoken of in terms of Mahamudra and Dzogchen, or the Great Perfection, and the teachings of the indivisibility of samsara and nirvana are the same as the view that's spoken of in the middle way teachings. And so those are coming from the Tantric tradition, and in the Sutra tradition, what we call the perfection of wisdom, the profound view of emptiness. All of these are just different names for the same thing. And so Milerapa then, for example, attained the state of union of Vajradhara in just one lifetime. And the view that he is given here is what he is referred to as the ultimate view. And that was discussed in the first part of these teachings when we went over the setting up the stage of the teachings, or the preface, to the teachings, which is where the person who requested the teachings, Tsering Chenga, requested that Milerapa give a teaching of his ultimate realization, of the ultimate view. And Milerapa said that what I'm teaching here, is the ultimate realization that I've had. This is what arose in me as my ultimate state of realization, and that is the middle way view. And so therefore we can understand from that that the middle way view is the ultimate or the highest view of Buddhism. And so when we're here for this teaching on the middle way, both for the person explaining these teachings and giving these teachings, as well as for those of you listening to these teachings, it's first most important that we first generate the correct motivation, putting our motivation being the vast and supreme attitude of bodhicitta, so that we are doing this teaching for the benefit of sentient beings. And so the generation of bodhicitta, or the mind of bodhicitta, is referred to as, in the text, it is the wish for perfect enlightenment for the sake of all sentient beings. So here we're doing this practice of teaching and receiving teachings. Then we need to think as our motivation that we are going to place all sentient beings in the state of Buddhahood. And in order to do that, I'm going to give this teaching or listen to this teaching. So that's our motivation. And so commonly, all of the teachers are always talking about this, and I'm always bringing this up again and again, explaining this. But whether we are in the context of giving and receiving teachings, or in terms of whatever type of virtues we may be engaged with our body, speech, or minds, we should make sure that the three excellences are complete in any of those virtuous practices. And so those three excellences are, as the preliminary or the joining to that practice, is before you begin the practice to make sure that that practice will be sealed by the attitude or motivation of bodhicitta. And then in the main body, or the actual practice, then, we should not be distracted by the afflictions of attachment, aversion, or ignorance. We should not be distracted by conceptual thoughts or looking here and there. And but rather, whatever virtuous practice we are engaging in, we should accomplish that with our mind single-pointedly attended to that. And once we have completed that practice, then we need to dedicate, with dedication and aspiration, we should dedicate the roots of our virtues. And so we have the preliminary, or the joining, which is the first excellence of generation of bodhicitta, the second excellence of the non-distracted state, or non-referential state in the main body of practice, and the conclusion, the third excellence of dedication. And those are the three excellences are something that we should be practicing in our ordinary day-to-day practices.
네, 다들 가장 시바는 이제 저당 당나서 엄마 시바 그 책이 때문에 전서 지 엄마 그 고아데 랩톱 거예요.
So as we discussed previously, if you just understand what's meant by the words middle or middle way, then you can have some understanding of the middle way just by knowing the meaning of those words.
근데 엄마 시인데 다 강그 소소 말한바 딘리지를 다 엄마 시는 딘리 송해요.
So generally when we talk about the middle, what we mean is that it's not falling into any particular space or any particular direction.
남준 딱 같은 소만 인기 안에 만전다와 다대요 세상다 마음 소수지요 근데 다 좀다 쇼바기는 좀다 드라마다 옛날에 다 좀다 마요바가 강자 옛날에 다 소소는 이제 만전 그다와 탁나 초바지 여바이 말이지.
As was discussed previously in the text, said that there are many different in terms of people who have a view of self based in a religion or a philosophy, or whether that is one that is not based in some kind of religion or philosophy. We have a great many different types of views of the self.
당가시기 나한테서 오늘 떠벌는데 봐. 그냥 딘디야 여바래라 아니 증가시기 나한테서 오늘 제염해봐. 아니 태반이도 따와 아니 딘디기 아니 따와요 돼버리다. 오마세도 여바 따와건 탈라래. 너무 많이 봐. 진짜 매바 최근 탈라 너무 많이 봐. 여미 딱히 니가 건 탈래 잘터 가지고 그러는데 오마세는 되게 성격.
And so when we're speaking of the middle way then so some people, some philosophies or some people assert that the self is something permanent, and others explain that the self is an annihilation or is absolutely non-existent. And the middle way position then is that they do not fall into either of these extremes. They don't fall into the extreme of existence or permanence, nor do they fall into the extreme of annihilation. So they are free from those extreme views.
나 어머기 양 저저조 때는 내만이 그때는 마음서 엄마한테 고토고 요리스.
And the main subject of the middle way philosophy can be understood by a presentation of the two truths.
그때인데 다 담복근조 된바 때는 돈다 된바 때는 된바니 송도 조바 생기는 것이에요.
And so they're commonly explained as first you explain what's called the fictitious truth or the conventional truth, then the ultimate or final truth, and then finally a union of the two truths.
그때 저는 그다음 베니기 남자들도 다 세번 몸부제열이 되는 것도 두소야요 말이라. 내가 몸부시에 되는 마음조제 양 그래서 갈래카로나 지금 드니지 차가요. 대인도 다른 것도 지금 강도덕기 때서 그 똥이기 내니다 똥이 그 고아다 되는 것도 그 고토가지 왔다 드니 타시세나 아니 지금 딱 되고 그거는 것도 지금 로인.
And so there's a lot to be said about the two truths, and we don't have a lot of time here, and I think if we get into it in too much detail, it'll be very difficult and tiring. So what I want to do today then is to try our best to get a good understanding of what is emptiness and what are the two truths, and put our efforts into that. And so everyone look at your books.
동네 근친 산지지 탐지 유지 송바인 세워다 되네 이거 저거도 데려와 나선
나오요다.
다 대기 가리 송이 열지는 대 군접 덴마크 왕드세는 송이 열이스 군접 덴마크 왕드세는 Then any Sanjaki, any Chutanje, the Lemre down, any Ponghan, the Jimchi, what a Tilikanabia, Sama, and the Yobani, the song you is. Data da down, any Ponghan Jimchi down, any Lemre Lasovaki, Tanyakanabia, Sama, Yobani, the song you is.
And so, in the text, we left off with this, the line on page 5 that said, complying with your type of mind, you ones of lesser mental ability, the all-knowing Buddha did teach that everything exists. So this is talking about the conventional or fictitious truth. And so in that fictitious truth, the Buddha did teach that karma exists, that the results of karma exist, that all of the aggregates and the different various realms of existence exist, and that even the self exists in the conventional truth.
Laborane, Toma Tanjoba Namji, then Jipina Ganyoba de that Tanji, and Toma Tanjoba, Nadia Yobano, Sina, Nasoka, Tanya Kunzo Kanso, Kare de Yobayana, then Oma Baga Deda and it in Nasoki, Jendrak Molatuna, and Yobani to kill here is. What are there and it Kunzo them wonders in a tenison here.
And so in the Prasangika or Madhyamaka Prasangika philosophy then, they say that whatever is said to exist in the worldly sense, whatever worldly people assert to exist, I also say exists. And so that is what we call an acceptance in the other person's face, which means that we accept what they say, but we don't accept it for ourselves. We accept it according to the worldly custom.
Then Ani Tinikata, Nans of Data, Ponkan Jinji, Dingata, now Sama, and Nans of Kare, Nans of Kum to Kale Yobayana, and Oma Tanjova, Deda Yob.
And so whether we're speaking of the outer environment or the beings within that environment, whatever appears and appears as existing in the conventional sense, the Madhyamaka Prasangika will also say that those things exist in the worldly sense or conventionally. And so I'm really concerned today with just making sure you have a good understanding of this material. So if you ask a Madhyamaka person whether this flower exists or not, then what would they answer? They would say that it exists conventionally. So I want to make sure you understand that. And the second question is, do you see that flower? Do you see it? And do you accept that that flower exists?
Yes, no. Okay, love it. Karelison, Tate, Cheransoka Yobanaji, Najan Cheransoki, and it Toma Kelemanaji, Cheransoka Mola Tuna, and Yobani the Kelly chose, Omatanjoba, Kijashik, the legit did it.
And so then a Madhyamaka Prasangika person then would say, okay, it exists. So just as you see it and you say that it exists, then the Madhyamaka Prasangika philosopher or person then would say that according to your perception, they will agree that it exists.
And
so I also accept that conventionally the flower exists. And so then, well, just as you have accepted that it exists, and we can say that it exists conventionally, does it truly or ultimately exist?
어다 대다 아니 체랑 속에 켈랑만 나지 아니 내 체랑 속에 뭘로 뛰나 아니 여반이도 켈랑 차고리 마도 바기 돈은 매도때 아니 체랑 속에 켈랑만 나지 돈은 좀는 내 아니 매도도 여반이도 켈랑해요 말이지 양 근접 댐바고 왕도 매도때 여반이도 켈랑만 잔지 아니 매도도 돈을 여반을 접이요 말이지.
And so, just as you have accepted that it exists conventionally, so I don't have to accept that it exists ultimately just because it has been accepted conventionally. When I say I accept it conventionally, I'm accepting it to you or in the face of worldly perception, but that doesn't mean that I have to accept that it ultimately exists. So just an acceptance in the conventional does not necessarily mean that it must be accepted in the ultimate sense.
되네다 가자 데니베 시엔도 근접 세시엔도 근접 세야도 좀만 고고디 라요 가자나 근접 세야도 좀 비측대 타니 그 근접 세야도 측대 아니 지다 데멀 맞아 그 소화기 되는데 그 깨자리 좀 세야도 그래서 이제 빈바게 저 전시에 진짜요 내가 난지 근접 세야돼 아니 지다 데멀 많이 봐 이제 좀만 더 오르지 근데 이제 단데 매도 때 근접과 뭐를 요새데 즈마도 뭐를 매도 때 여바 켈랑이래 대자마도 바가 저기요 말이지.
And so when we're discussing the two truths, what we call the fictitious truth or the conventional truth, the word itself means, in Tibetan, the word kunzop literally means fake. It's the same word as like to tell a lie or to say something not true. So it is a deception. It's not true. It's not real. And so when we say that something exists conventionally or it exists fictitiously, it exists then only in the face of that convention. But that doesn't mean that it exists truly.
근데 큐 가야로마 아니 이제 근접과 뭐를 접었잖지 and
so any phenomena, just because it is established as existing conventionally, that conventional establishment does not necessitate or does not imply ultimate establishment or ultimate existence. So it's, for example, like a dream.
malam genang sobaji malam na tong yorite yena ani je malam ngola janji chude yobala drom thoya june zo de ani cherangi mek chema mare de ga dembang thogo mare yoba ni de chema de demba de drop thogo mare de do kazan nan zo ki de marga na ha chema me sin sanji ko man do tingen je jabu long ji tanga so ta de je wa yi.
And so then a question is going to come about in response to this. So they'll say, well, of course the flower exists, I see it, right? But just because you see something doesn't mean that it truly exists. And what's the reason for that? The reason is that because our eye consciousness is not a valid perception. It's not a valid cognition. And why is it not a valid cognition? Because it is a consciousness which is mistaken or confused through ignorance. And any mistaken consciousness, whatever it sees, is what we call a mistaken or confused perception or deluded perception. And so our eye cannot establish something's true existence. So just because you see something as existing with your eye, that seeing does not establish something as being truly existing or the true reality. And the reason is because our eye, again, is not a valid cognition. And it cannot, because it's not a valid cognition, it cannot establish something as truly existing. And it's just like the quote from the Samadhi Raja Sutra, which is the King of Samadhi Sutra that Khenpo gave previously, where it said that the eye, ear, and nose, and so on are not valid cognitions.
Oma chenaana ta ngacho ke megan nang deva de nawata da mai ba ki deda mado ba drubji ki ripa kari yusina 다 가서 거기 집어나지 산지 좀 내게 주대다 담배 덴버 먼저 가기 다 롱망고여리 시럽도 바로서 sem만 돌아서 버거는 주담도 똥이 뭐 롱망고도 대리 직대리 산지 롱고고는 무슨 doctor여리 가르치는 저 산지에 탐지 침만 말이지 주 탐지 끝내 저때 잡다와 얘는 체여리다 아니 그 산지 그 송은 아니 좀마 로마메 바이 말이 대인도 좀 멀어봐디 대당 되네 주 탐지 끝내 로만 좀더 접하기 아니 산지 그 이시디 적은데 되네 주대가 단데 덴바트바 저요 말이 대 맞아버는지 산지 주대가 단데 덴바트바 요 말이 손 산지 그 롱배 망고여리 대양강 쪽간에 드리드 차게여리.
And so, okay, you Madhyamakas say that things don't exist the way I see them. Well, what proof do you have for that? That's a good question. So, then, first, one way that we can prove that is through scripture. So, there are many such scriptural citations that we could bring up from the Perfection of Wisdom Sutras and so on. And those sutras are considered valid proofs because the Buddha has attained that omniscience, where the Buddha has seen everything exactly and precisely as it is. And his speech then is something that we know is not deceptive in terms of reality. The Buddha then did not see things as truly existing, and therefore we can know then the Buddha has spoken and told us that things do not truly exist. So we have many such scriptural citations, so that is one way in which we can prove that.
맞아 너무 산지밖에 또 산지 좀 내대 아니 직대다 추탐진 첨바보를 캐내요. 탐진 첨바기 신나요. 얘는 아니 추는 직대 탐진 꼬바보를 캐내요 말이지.
So the Buddhists, we accept that the Bhagavan Buddha then is the knower of all worlds, the knower of the entire situation of the world, but we do not believe that, or do not accept that the Buddha is the creator or the controller of the world.
집에다 나서 아니 롱고고네 아니 맞고 나와나지 아니 데모 마저바 맞고기 아니 말다 나와라서 체마 많이 받게 비슷한 거를.
And so our first way of establishing that things don't exist the way we perceive them is through these scriptural citations, such as the one that I gave, where it said that the eye, ear, nose, and so on are not valid cognitions.
근데 준진이바 됐다 가장 안서 오마게 르바트서는 르바비 따지 제는 제인데 근데 나서 나와나지 아니 나서 그 셴바나지 아니 추단지 덴바트고나 봤다 오마게 르바고는 되는 법이야.
And the second reason then are the reasonings, the philosophical, logical reasonings of the middle way, which we can use to examine and realize that things do not exist in the way that they appear or in the way that we grasp them.
근데 다 산지기데 메도드 덴바토 저바 메바송이리 어디 준진기 아니 나한테는 나와나 인기 아니 메도드 접이어 말이지. 준진이와데 단 메도드가 단 오마바게 저바 준진잖아 아니 저바가 따지 제인데 아니 나한테 나와다다니 덴베 접이어 말이지. 근데 이마인데 단데 여바 세대야 되는 거서 아니 이제 근접 대마가 왕의 세는 시바다 아니 지금 직빈바가 로 어다 대 이제잖아 되는 단위 끝나면서 요 시티는 비시샤데 되는 이제 다 팀메도 딘 송나 되는 나서 그 추탐피라는人제 초고요 근데 대 근접 장당 아니 이제 출바가 롱어 장당 아니 나랑 좀 말을 레송하게 아니 되는 게다 왕보 시바가 뭐 장마도 아니 돈 담발은 데베트와요 말이지 어떤 소리예요.
And so the Buddha then has said that this flower, for example, does not truly exist. And so that is one reason that we can understand that the flower does not exist in the way that we perceive it. The second then is through examining that flower with reasoning. By thinking of these logical reasons and examining that flower, we can realize for ourselves that they do not truly exist in the way that they appear. And so when we say that the flower appears, we're only saying that it appears conventionally or in the fictitious truth, that is in accordance with worldly perception and in accordance with what we call a conventional presentation of phenomena. And so we can apply that, we can take that same understanding of that flower and apply that to all phenomena. We can take that same reasoning and say that, that all of these phenomena, they exist conventionally. They only exist towards a mistaken or confused perception. And that they exist to a mind which is infected by ignorance. But they are not truly existing. And so I'm going to ask you guys a question. So do you think that sentient beings' minds and sense faculties are valid cognitions, or do you think that the mind of the Buddha is a valid cognition? So which of those do you have faith in? Which do you believe is authentic or true valid cognition? Do you think sentient beings' minds and senses are more true, or do you think the Buddha is more true? So raise your hand if you think sentient beings, if you have faith or have trust in the valid perception of sentient beings, ordinary beings. If you think that the Buddha's perception is valid, raise your right hand. And if you think sentient beings' perceptions are valid, raise your left hand.
Yeah. 계속 제가 그래라면 계속 그 얘나 맞아 되는 거 가야 하거든 얘는 참아 가르쳐 못하는 자식이라고 맞아 되는 로경 소리야 오케이 야 연자
again right hand for the Buddha, left hand for ordinary beings.
이 유미야요 그러니 가로리도
only raise one. Those two are both.
가르쳐는 생진근데 덴바리 상여러와 산제 그때 덴바마리 좀마리 라베여러 대도 니가 용양도
So sentient beings say that their perceptions are true and valid, and the Buddha says that they're not true and not valid, so you can't raise both hands. Raise your hands.
얘는 양 대여다. 계속 산지에 때 나서 똥바에 잡지 공송의 덴바리 선 대코나가 이 켈린 거야 니봐요. 산지 송로. 내가 점진 소던도 죽었다 깨서서야로.
So you don't have to accept this just because you say that the Buddha is our teacher and I take refuge in the Buddha. You can understand this through reasoning.
가르치는 산지의 송대라 아니 때 잡딘 저 저거다 이제 엔디 아니 산지의 송만나 이 주제여래. 다 나랑서 생기되라 아니 저 저거다 이제 용마이나 다때 여봐도 주제여.
There is some support for the Buddha's statements. There, we can examine with logical reasoning, and we can find that there is support for what the Buddha says, that these appearances don't truly exist. And there is no logical support that will prove that the perception of sentient beings is true and truly existing.
대연도 가장 한조 그 건도 안에 오마가 르바트서 가장 저 대지 시에요. 어째 대연도 르바트서 아니 취 탐제 그때는 고용마이 마이나 근데 르바가 뭐라 아니 덴베도 그 취책 때문에 도토야 말이지. 근데 다 준진이야 봐. 르바야 봐. 아니 지 산제 그 송으로 롱이야 봐. 어떤 딘디 주제는 되는 취 탐제 덴바마도 그 동반이리 있습니다. 오마가 딘디 송이야.
And so previously in the last teaching, then we did go through, we did take some time and go through these reasonings of the middle way. And so you can apply those reasonings to all phenomena. And so in the face of that logical reasoning, none of these things truly exist. And so we have reasoning, we have logic, and we also have the scriptural citations from the Buddha. And so, through all of those things, we can see that things don't truly exist and that they are emptiness.
얘는 추탐제 그 무분 내놓고 왕드세는 가져리세나 단단된거 왕드는 그거 산진 이점이 공부법이 공자미 저자 사다 란다미 대법거든 이심이 대선령이 대법이 만들 책 따고 좀 쓰는 데 있어요.
And so then in this quote that we just discussed, the complying with your type of mind, you ones of lesser mental ability, the all-knowing Buddha did teach that everything exists. And so what is the point of saying of lesser mental ability? That means that sentient beings, ordinary beings, minds are mistaken or confused by ignorance. And so in the face of those beings, the Buddha says that things exist. That means conventionally they exist. But ultimately, then it says, from the standpoint of the superfactual truth, this is also another word for the ultimate truth, the text continues, from the standpoint of the superfactual truth, there are no, let alone blockages, even Buddhas themselves. There are no meditators or meditations, no levels to be traversed and no signs of the path, no fruition, kayas, or wisdoms, therefore there is no nirvana, just designations made with names and words.
단다 덴바세 돈 담바세야 되고 말로와 그래봐 돈 담바세야 돼 말로와 됐다나이 말 군조 세도 가서 좀바가 틀리노 너도 책대 보게 되다 고와져 군조 세야 되는 좀바세야 돼 진짜 좀바도 고고 그랬다 단당 세인데 어떻게 너네 덴바세야 그 책나오죠 고고 그래 근데 단다 덴바세도 무분내로고 그 몰라 아니 때 쪽대 단다 덴바세 되는 시리요 근접 덴바세인데 제 출바고 몰라 덴바리 다 다른 거저 성어동 시보린도 메도다 가림 몰라 저거 놓으시는 거저 저거 몰라 덴바린도 메도 너가요 저저 그 라파데 예자 용자 당 사조 터마도 가시 그 니가 자가 너 덴데다 네 메도다 통만도 너 몰라 덴바리샤 산디야 나 대바 유대 잡은지 송데 된 여절이지 라바니에 장긴도 근데 나선 메도든 무슨 뭐는 덴바니도 저기 대 가레스는 가서 점봉 모드 저기 가레 점바리스는 가서 마르바 대 컨트롤 성도 봐 근데 말람기 시바나지 말람고 시바나지 어따 대그 모드 근접 덴바시 다 단단 덴바시인데 단단하세도 말라바지 그거 요리 다비 말라보 모드 아니 덴베 저데한테 추탐지고 무보고 내로이 말 근데 추탐지 무빈에 저를 세인데 추탐지 덴바 마도바 아니 똥반이 사모 똥반이 차대요. 되는지 임바인데 아니 단단 덴바 근접 덴바 오마 세야도 아니 나서 레 담보바기 저 오마도 된데서 다 검정케이나데 검정세인테이나데 된지 쳇도 빼 야보고나 내 채모요.
And then the ultimate truth again, or as this text says, superfactual truth, we need to have an understanding of that word. The meaning then of ultimate truth here, or superfactual, means that it is not deceptive in terms of the truth. And as we discussed before, fictitious or conventional truth means that it is false. And so we need to have a clear understanding of these words. The ultimate truth is that in the true reality, that truth is actually established. That is the real reality. And that the fictitious truth or the conventional truth is only true to a mistaken perception. So, in whose face or for who is that flower existing or established? So some of you were raising one hand or the other hand or both hands. And so the flower then, you might think, oh, well, in my perception, that flower exists. So you raised your left hand. But then you also thought, well, the Buddha also must know. So you raised your right hand, then you raise both hands. So really, when we say that it is existing for us or it is established for us, that means that it exists in the face of ignorance, in our confused perception, which is confused or influenced by ignorance. Just like the appearances of a dream that appear though they don't truly exist. So that perception is what we call a conventional existence, or those things exist conventionally or fictitiously. But the ultimate non-deceptive truth is the true reality of things. And that true reality of things is that they don't truly exist and that they are emptiness. And so for a person who is just beginning to study or meditate on the middle way philosophy, it's really important to understand the terms conventional or fictitious truth, ultimate truth, and middle way. And if you can have some understanding of those words, it's very meaningful, very helpful for you.
So there's goso.
Did you understand a little bit?
Goso. Dembani goso. Dembani.
Did you understand the two truths?
Kunzot demba sede zumas demba goso.
Did you understand that the conventional truth means that it is false, that it's fictitious?
Tende ta nanzo kan namjuen ka danzen nyumumba dongar. Ota tende kareje yimba yina ota teda cham kunzot demba ka tena rode yoris.
And so ordinarily when we discuss self-grasping, affliction, suffering, all of those are discussed in terms of conventional truth.
Tende de chama ne ta malam na yi ki demba madropa. Anje lo truba ki. Ani lo truba dan truba gangwala ne shayong ki nawa. Ota tende be chade yoris.
So those are all appear like a dream, that they don't truly exist, and they only appear to a mistaken or confused perception.
Tende da go tandan demba wang da na go sanje ni jame sumodo ta
No.
tende tandan demba ko wang da she shana panzan korwas ne ya tobio maris tobza nyangin de ba se tobio maris tende ta padi saja ba kan konde yemi se sumodo ta wa wata tende mare te tongda mala korwa da nyangin de ba te da ta le ne yer mai ba ani je korwa da nyangin de ba se ya de ani je dembe toba mai ba ani tamje ani je demba mado ani chutam je tongben ni garanji wata tena mande ba de sin tena suma yore.
And so in this verse that we just went through, it said that there are no, let alone blockages, even Buddhas themselves. So what it's referring to here is that there is no samsara and there is no nirvana. The ultimate view in the Sakya school is what's referred to as the and that nothing is separate from that.
Then lang gomba bo kanza ani gomza ki da ta de tawa de doza ka sa da lam ani ta to ka ani toza ki sanje ka ko da ishi wata de da tamje yang ani dembe
Of samsara or nirvana truly exist, but they are mere dependent arisings. that are mere designations, things that are imputed or designated with words and labels, and that ultimately, in the ultimate reality, none of these things truly exist.
감som 땡다 요와제 돈의 마도 제와미 지민len직 지바미 레담레제 나미 대선 콜바 맹영미 타토 동나 대답다 손을 그네스요.
The three realms with inanimate and animate are primordially not produced. They have no birth. There is no base, no co-emergent birth, no karma, and no karmic maturation. Therefore, samsara's name also does not exist.
다대송의 감성스는 한소 지금 콜와데라다 가르스나 안에 콜와 보도 섬은 당원이 바이나 단 로와르 룩 심신신 들려야다 냐와 야다 던로스 때문에 송송 되는 토리 라 마당 라마이 라데는 토리 쏜 단 로와르로 쓰는 되는 것이야. 되네 양 감성지 되는 것이인데다 더 조칸 좀이 감스는 감성도 되는데다 데 감성 로와르로비 템바 노딘직빈 되네 요완나 그 생기되다 단지 아니 제 군좀 초바가 뭐다 아니 딘지자마도 동나 아니 다 다데 감성나 그 취되다 단지 되는 마도가 제와매봐 딘지제스 가장 나서 오늘 첫 번째는 소만하지 아니 제다 쟁가 레 잘와게 취 너네는 다 이제는 제와는데 봐. 다 너무 때는 게 만용바게 취돼 있는 데는 무슨 해요. 너는 마덕 제와는 송도 얘 더만이 더비야 말이지. 얘 더만이 콘레그 취단이 제용요 말이지.
And so here when we're talking about the three realms, so we can discuss samsara in terms of the three realms or the beings in those three realms as what we call the 6 realms of birth. So the 6 realms of birth are the 3 lower realms or the 3 unfortunate realms of the hells, the pretas or hungry ghosts, and the animal realms or the upper or pleasant realms of the humans, gods, and demigods. And so the 3 realms are what are referred to as the desire realm, the form realm, and the formless realm. So in either of these, what we call the inanimate here, the 3 realms with inanimate, and animate. The inanimate means kind of the actual realm of existence, the place. And the animate means the beings inside that place. So whether we're talking about the 3 realms or the 6 realms of beings in those realms, none of them, other than in a mistaken, conventional way, none of them exist, ultimately. So none of them are existing, and primordially they have never existed. They have never been born. Just like that Madhyamaka philosophy reasoning that we went through last time, where we refuted birth arising from any of the 4 extremes. So all of these phenomena of both samsara and nirvana are free from arising and are what is said here, primordially not produced. They have no birth.
된도다 콘레그 취되다 단지 아니 너는 ranjinji 마도바 아니 저 담모제와 매바 바드 이제 내바 매바 탄가고 매바 아니 저 쟁가 내송기 주변 다 탐제는 잘대바 보다 딘디제 숨어요듯이.
And so it's all phenomena of samsara and nirvana are primordially not naturally or not inherently existing. They were never born in the beginning, they never abide in the middle, and they will never cease in the end. So they are free from all such conceptual elaborations.
된다 가정한서 벤중라고 나서 너는 매도라고 제임이야. 아니 저 거란 도만이니 아니 저랑 진짜 들어봐야 말이지. 당분이니 이제 다때 근저 띵진 더럽은 종아 잡마도 밖에 이제 덴베 쪽밖에 되는 디메도 되는 제와요 말이지. 당부 제와요 말이지. 다 제와 매바이나 아니 다 되는 내봐요 말봐. 당부 제 되는 내고 그래. 다때 당부 맞지봐. 아니 제와 매봐. 다 되는 내봐 매바리. 다 내봐 매바리 사대 때 최된 가과예요 말고. then the Namtar goes on with Dani. Domani, and it can get names of the tower is Jemedo, the Denamans of the Kowaja Togoya. Pensun Medo.
And so we used as our example of a phenomena that flower that we had sitting here. So we use that as our example to apply this reasoning to other things. So we first understood that the flower, other than just a dependent arising, a conventional arising, there is no truly existing birth or arising of the flower. And so without ever having arisen, the flower also cannot remain or abide. And without that abiding, the flower could never be said to have a cessation. And so that flower then is primordially free from birth, abiding, and cessation. So we were using that flower then as our basis, our primary example then. Did the flower arise? Is there a rising or a birth to the flower? Of course the flower arises. You plant it in a garden and then it forms. There's no truly existing or inherently existing arising. If you plant a flower in a garden, is it going to grow?
Yes.
Did you guys understand last time when we talked about the refuting existence or refuting birth from the four extremes? So last time we went through all of these reasonings, right? We went through the analysis of the nature, the reason of being neither unity or plurality, the analysis of causes, the Vajra sliver, the examination of the causes and results, negation of arising from the four possibilities, and so on, right? And so if we examine with the middle way reasoning, then we cannot establish any truly existing arising of the flower.
that the kunzo tender zang ge ya ji din de da chu tang ji din me do de yuan za ma do ba de ne me do ko ran ge ji da ye jie yong ne me do de jie wa zhou to yin me do jie wa zhou yin de de ta man zu de man ni de go go ya de de ju bai me se ba bi chen de ba da ka zang zo ka shi de ro wa tu ni de ka nga zo de la bai me se ko no chen bo la bu ni chu tam je dong ban ni de se xie yan de wa da jie yang man hang ba nga rang zo ge jing me zu ma na yi wa da de nga rang zo ge jing jie yang tong ya me ba guo ya me ba zhen ya me ba cuo ya me ba ji cha bu du san de ya lo wo ga zhi nga rang zo ge me ge zong tong na we zha tu din de je li yong na ta dong ni de ma do san ma de wa ga wa dong ni nga me ge ne zong tong ya do na we ne zha tu ya do sam yo de na ga zhi dong ni yan song ne chu tang ji jing nga rang zo de me ge tong ya me ba ani je na we 투야 매바지 차불 살 데머니 아니 되는 가르와다 때 거와야 고질라 말하는 드니비 차노여로 되네 때 이제 데니 때문에 야 고제 거와라고나 왔다 돈 담발에 때 거다 데메트 범도 얘는 근접 출발 갔잖아 아니 이제 땡 더번 좀 왔잖아 진인 더봤잖아 되는 뭔가서 근데 근접 고치된다 담비 요 초보도 요예는 거다 데만 마도가 똥말 리 초보도 어떻게 거와들 나거든 오마세나
And so before we talked about the the examination of whether a existing or non-existing result arises. So if existing flower were to be born, there's no point in it being born because it already exists. So, and a non-existing flower can't be born because something non-existent can never come into existence. If it doesn't exist, it just doesn't exist. And then we also went through the examination of the causes going through the arising from the four extremes. And when you examine in that way, we can see that there is no truly existing arising. And when we say that a flower arises, what we're saying then is that due to the coming together of many causes and conditions, there is an interdependence, a dependent arising of a conventional dependent arising of the flower. And that is not the case, that there was some truly existing seed, and from that truly existing seed there came a truly existing solitary singular flower. And so that type of existence, that type of situation does not exist, but there is merely the dependent arising, the conventional arising of the coming together of all these causes and conditions to have a what we call a conventional existence or conventional arising of the flower. And so if we don't examine it at all, and we just consider that what we see is true, then we can say then in that way that, yeah, the flower exists and the flower arises. But when we actually look into it with reasoning, when we examine it with our logic, then we know that that flower only exists as a conventional dependent arising, but does not truly or inherently exist. And so it's really important that we have a very good understanding of these two truths, because this is something that we can have a very big mistake about and a very wrong perception of. So many people have the mistaken understanding that if something is emptiness, that it absolutely cannot appear to us. It's as if we had our eyes closed, that there's nothing there at all. That it's something, if something's emptiness, that it can't be seen or heard or felt. And so they might think that, of course it's not emptiness because I can see it with my eyes. I can hear it with my ears and so on. And with that type of understanding, that is seeing the two truths as absolutely contradictory. And so we need to make sure that we have a really good understanding of these two truths. And what understanding we need to come to is that things don't truly exist. And merely as a mistaken or conventional dependent arising, things do exist conventionally, or in that conventional or fictitious truth, things do exist. But as they exist conventionally, they do not exist ultimately. That is, that they are emptiness. And that's the understanding that we need to come to.
Consume dinner, Yowaji, say, and it consume the water rookie, no you could shoot it at Tamke. Don't rising to Bamaba. Then I did Dembe to Bakivamaba, Jimaba. And led and Amid at Tamji and Kunzota Madoba, don't Tamala rising to Bamaba. Then do Korwa Shibagan around so Nada, Data, Pomboda, Kanda, Jim down. No, Nangju, the Senji de la Tanje, and it's hard more Trubago Mola, and it didn't know there was a Madobaki. Tatokatona, and it's Debe Trubam Meba, Rajin Trubam Meba. But then Tatotona, Deda Da, son of the Jajamala, in this only. Two times you can never Tato what the Tendis. Manzo now that Rajin Trubaya Maris. Two times you that Zone and Namchinka, Dubaga, Park, Chudena Tanje. Ya는 Korwa young in the Debaki. Yanan also which is some note in Jipping, Nangju to send it at the Tamje, and it's Rajin to Denver to Bameba. And then Rajin to Denver to Bamena young, and it's Lupa, and it's Trupa Kunzo, Tenjongi, one with Nawaza Madobaki, now that the Denver to Bayomaris. They treated that time the name of Tatopa in the days. Tatokutun in the doors, that there's a Milerapa in the Monsoon days.
And so when asked what was the ultimate truth or the ultimate reality, when given this, requesting this teaching, Milerapa answered to say that, that none of these things truly exist, that there is no karma, no karmic ripening, no ground, no samsara, no nirvana, no outer container world, nor any abiding sentient beings in that world. That all of these things are merely interdependent arisings that exist conventionally for mistaken minds, though they do not truly or inherently exist. And so what Milerapa was pointing out here is the true reality. And the true reality here is that that all phenomena from form all the way to the omniscient mind, all phenomena of samsara and nirvana, all of the external world as well as the internal beings within those worlds, none of them inherently or truly exist. And although they do not truly exist, they still appear as conventional truth. They still appear conventionally as dependent arisings. And those dependent arisings, as they arise, don't truly exist. And that is the ultimate truth. That is the ultimate realization, or what Milerapa is pointing to here.
Emma Simti Majorna to some Sanji Jelison. Jumin Devon the State of Kundup Demo Wang, Kawatan, Young Indo, Tamji Yu, Tobe songs in the
And so, that's what there is in the ultimate. My goodness, if sentient beings were non-existent, from where would the Buddhas of the three times arise? Without cause, fruition is impossible. So from the standpoint of the fictional truth, the capable one taught, samsara and nirvana, everything exists.
That they don't know that they're Towaji Lamde. Harrison, one Senji Deda Tamji, Korwa Gichu Deda Tamji, Ponde Gichu Deda Tamji, Demetroba Meba Imbayina. Then it's Senji in Latina, and Magnan, Ninja Kandagongo Buddhist. Then it's a late and Devok, Lemdek and Naja Deda Tamji, Demetroba Meba Imbayina, Tananzo Jibbe, give a drop, the Papang. And it's the legend of the conduct take over this. And the young Tatok Sanjay got a sheet as okay, the Gomba boy and me, Gonza and me, Sada Lam, and it in Devo got a sheet as okay by Mayana, and not so anything Kora Pama Tandala Zumbasea. 아니 냥이란 데바 아니 토박이 지다다 나오고 지디 출라 법령당 아니 지 냥이서 해요. 뭐다 된지 그바여서 말해베스. 뭐다 되니서 못하는데.
And so then we may have some doubts here when we hear this ultimate truth, that if we hear that if sentient beings in samsara and samsara don't truly exist, then why would we meditate on compassion? What would be the objects of our compassion if they don't exist? If the karmic cause and results, if karma and its ripening, karma and its results don't exist, then how are we to practice the abandoning the causes of non-virtue and accomplishing virtue and so on? And if ultimately there's also no meditation, no meditator, no ultimate, no path and ground, and ultimately no wisdom or Buddhahood to attain, then what's the point of abandoning samsara and and trying to attain nirvana? It all seems pointless, right?
아니 나는 근데 돈 다 받네 lok다 똑바 이마이나 내 lok대 아니 똑바 이마이나 나서 검자 보고 요 말이 내 검자가 살아요 말이 내 lok그 돈데 다 똑바지 공도 저 똑바 이마이나 얘는 다 나서 가르치는 힘제 공고이시는 선지대다 담게 돈은 덴버 줘봐요 말이데 얘는 아니 지티 덴버 줘봐 매바 뚱바지다 마도는 근데 감동 콜바는 콜나 나는 저 동하나 초바지 용되지 그냥 가서 좀 행제양 공부해야리라. 근데 이제 다 콜바를 내 대와 임바이는 콜바가 제가난 질라서 거기다 콜바가 동하나 초바지 다티 트루바다 마제가 빠르도 콜바가 동하데 여러 딘디 트루바다 세바가 치다 네다 콜바빵고 여리 근데 냥인 대바가 고만 토고 여리 나는 저 지로 트루바가 원이 제바데 마도 바가 동담만 내놓고 반드세나 근데 나는 저때 아니지 인제 곰자기 열심히요 말이 곰바보게 네 강자요 말이 반자 코르와 덴버토요 말이 아니 이제 토자냥이는 덴버토요 말이 얘나 대다 마도 그 반드나 근데 나는 저 심지요리라 아니 디 달건수만 아니게 아니 따따다 근접된 거 그만데서는 아니 콜레 그 남자 참아요 봐 근데 이제 임바인데 내가 저 이제 레전데 아니지 배워 더 아니 당연한 얘기 아니다 다다 생기는 얘기제는 아니 이제 단계가 나가 참 되는데 요초그리스 되는 때 있는 용이요.
And so if you realize that ultimate truth, then at that point then there is nothing to meditate on and nothing to obtain. It's all been obtained and you have already realized it. But until that without the realization of that ultimate truth, then all of this suffering still exists. Beings, until their ignorance, until their mistakenness and ignorance is exhausted or is abandoned, then all of the various sufferings of samsara still exist. So if you are still abiding in samsara and ignorance, then you still will experience, you still have all of the various sufferings of birth, aging, sickness, and death, and so on. That suffering exists for you. And for you, if you have not abandoned that ignorance and you're still in samsara, then you still need to abandon samsara. You still need to attain nirvana. And and although ultimately there is no something to meditate on, there is no meditator, and so on. Conventionally, until one has realized that truth, until one has realized that absence of true reality, then there is still someone to meditate. There is still an object of that meditation, say on compassion, that you should meditate on suffering sentient beings. And there is still something to be obtained by that meditation, that is nirvana as the goal of attainment. So until you realize that truth, then all of these things still exist. All of these conventional things, that is sentient beings, and for that matter, all phenomena of samsara and nirvana still exist. and the process of karmic cause and result of accomplishing virtue and abandoning non-virtue, practicing compassion and so on. All of those still conventionally exist and still exist for that person. And so the Buddha then said that all of these things for those sentient beings, all phenomena of samsara and nirvana do exist. And that means then that as long as you still have dualistic perception, then there is still a meditator, there are still compassion to be meditated on, beings that are suffering to be meditated on. There is still a karma, and that karma still needs to be practiced in terms of abandoning vice and adopting virtue, abandoning samsara, and so on. So we're not meditating in order to meditate. We're meditating in order to not have to meditate. And so we are meditating in order to pacify suffering, grasping, self-grasping, and so on. But once all of those things have been pacified, there's no longer any purpose to meditation. And so it's the same like when we're eating. You know, when we're eating in order to fill our stomachs. We're not eating just for the sake of eating.
Sometimes. Then the Nazo the Nachukumone, Chutuba de Daya, Sanjay Command Tobaga cheat, Chutubia. That's Sanjay Command Top Taraga Capsa, that's Sanjay Command Tobaga cheat, Chutubia.
And so in Buddhism, we are practicing in order to obtain Buddhahood. But once you have attained Buddhahood, you no longer need to practice in order to attain Buddhahood.
Then that's sucking the Gom Tartoba Tela and Gomi Sinatini Gomjaya, Gomi Sajatims.
And so
they carry in the Tatamuma, so Gom the Tartoba, Nelo, Tona Mado, part of Gomjavi. Then Nelo, Tartoba, the Totawa, Totadu. Then I saw that Gom Jago Marwa. Could that say that drops had it.
So in the Mahamudra teachings, the ultimate kind of attainment then is what's called non-meditation. And so first, until we have that perfect realization, we still have to apply ourselves in meditation. But once you have fully realized that, then you no longer need to meditate. And that's that state then of non-meditation.
That is the demon that is goes on.
So did you get some understanding of the two truths?
That the method the Yoba Sishi and that demon you can't come that the method the Yoba killing.
And so when we say the flower exists, for which truth are we saying that it exists? So we accept that it exists in the state of the fictitious or conventional truth, right?
That concept them back and mola Yona that is Yoba coach they don't Yorebe.
And so just by accepting that it exists conventionally, does that mean it ultimately exists?
No. that they na that thing so method yoba ni the thong de ba ka make shibate this shibate dembare sema remando.
And so is the consciousness, the I consciousness that sees that flower and sees it as existing, is that I consciousness a true seer? Is it a valid cognition that sees whether something truly exists or not?
Method demba ni den zimba lo de trubare samale. Trubare.
La.
Method demba ni den zende ba lo de trubare ves.
Method demba ni zimba di kandechi.
Zimba lo de. Method demba ni den zende ba lo de yorwa. De lo trubare ves.
And is the mind that sees the true truths of the flower, is that mind mistaken?
Yes.
You West don't have much to say.
동반이 이제 춘달라 태점장면 맞아대 태점장면 사와는 시바 슈퍼치 과제지 평상년 맞아서 손이 저와 나는 좀 딩해나 다 취대다 단계 덴바 동반이 예나매나 파제 동반이 인사리 인저리 상에 그 던저르 태점장게 로라 제 토바이 마이나 맞지바 평상년 맞아봐요 디 바캬드 로르잖아 다네 갈에 티와 유만 데니 시방 코르와데서 파 로보 시바나이 데니 코르와데 탄 타바 톱톱데 좀 빠데 아연데와 거만 조바는 대송 그래서 다 동이 또나다 알라라데데 다 동이도 또 마탐나 다 추데다 단게 동이 인사리 렘베 쪼바 여상마리 나란서 그 단쟁글로 어때서야 즈마 인사리 파친 인사리 진짜 제자자가 타주 마타바 이마이나야 딱 근데 파체 인사를 삼바게 던절 그 대성자로 이렇게 더 박혀도 저는 야토바이는 평산좀 맞아봐요 뒤인데 간자다 마음바 갈래 시바 코르와데 탄노그리 시방 코르와데 술보 시보나 이제는 그는 가서 코르와데 야 탈그리 손 평산좀 맞아서 손이 근데 다른 빼야고 것이 그래서 그래서 대장기야는 그래서 빼 수남 조고사요. 아니 대참지야 나는 속에 죄다 득법 망보지 상토거든.
And so in the 400 verses of the Middle Way by Aryadeva said that people don't even have doubts about this. And so even just by doubting the truth of samsara, or the truth of reality, you can destroy the foundations of samsara. Of conditioned existence. And so even just by thinking that things are probably emptiness, and by having a doubt, having a suspicion, but a probable suspicion that things are emptiness and that things don't truly exist, then that has unimaginably great benefits. If you can have that doubt, that suspicion that things are emptiness, even if you can't conclude for yourself with 100% certainty that things are emptiness, just by having that probably intention, having that thought that things are probably emptiness, then you're making impressions in your mind that in the future, in future lives, that you will ultimately attain the full realization of emptiness and destroy the foundations of existence, of ordinary conditioned existence, and attain liberation. So if you can obtain the realization of emptiness, then that's wonderful and amazing. But even if you can't, just by having that thought that things are probably not truly existing, and that my self-grasping mind that I see things with is probably not real, probably not true, then that has really unimaginably great benefits and will ultimately lead you to destroy the foundations of existence, of conditioned existence, and attain liberation. And so this is, just by having this much of an understanding, has brought us really a great amount of virtue, and has eliminated or will eliminate a great amount of our non-virtues. And so taking our understanding of this flower, all the examples we took with this flower, we take that as our example and we apply what we understood from the flower to everything. We can apply that to our outer environment, to the mountains and our general environment. We can also apply that to the beings that live in that environment, as well as to all the objects of our perceptions of forms, sounds, smells, tastes, tactile sensations, and so on. We can apply it to our self-grasping mind, to our afflictions, and understanding in the same way that we understood to the flower that things do not truly exist. And while they don't truly exist, they still appear conventionally just like the appearances of a dream or an illusion. And that's the understanding that we need to carry. And so first we have discussed the two truths individually or separately. We say that things exist conventionally or fictitiously, and that they don't exist ultimately. And so right now we have the first understanding, which is in my own mistaken mind and my own mistaken perception, that flower exists. But in the true reality, ultimately, that flower doesn't exist. So we have those two separate understandings right now, right? La.
군접 여바 그 추제 여바 대당 근데 동담바 덴바 마도바 그 지 여바
Now
대니 양 추니 소소이만도 고발래야 여 말이지.
And so a key point here is that we shouldn't understand these as two separate things. That is, one thing which conventionally or fictitiously exists, and another separate thing that ultimately doesn't exist.
근데 여바 무고 나와다 매바 동부 추니니 모예메 로제고 라르 기능 연미데 탐제 송조 영바인스는 다 저즈물라르 베트니 소미야리스.
네 롱데 양저치소.
네 나네레 네 코로나한테 자와나.
Listen.
여바 무고 나와다 매바 동부 추니니 모예메 로제고 라르 기능 연미데 탐제 송조 영바인스.
Oh yeah.
다다
쇼나나 가네이라.
다다 탐제 군접된 거 원드는 거와다는 영인데 탐제 유지特别松是 대송차송아.
Oh, that's.
딘삼되네. 다딘 회인데는 그러니 대만이 소소에 시에셔. 군접된 거 원드는 추당제 열이 다 단단된 거 원드는 추당제 라이데 줘봐요 말이 시시용라와. 다 원은 디 대만이 대한 소소되베지. 다 추니 다대를 야셔관다고. 어떤 된 말이지. 디고발래요. 다 됐는 가지도 엄마. 되는 이마인데 다 여법은 뭐 나와다 매바동 추니니 뭐예메로지 보나는 얘는 탐제 송조 양바인 세워다 되는 소리예요.
Less. Okay, so then the next line of the text says that everything appearing as things and non-existence, their inner reality of emptiness, both are inseparable in entity of one taste. Thus, self-knowing and other knowing are non-existent, and everything is a unification, vast and open. So above, the explanations of the conventional ultimate were given separately, and then here they're brought together, where you're not to have the understanding that things conventionally exist as a separate understanding from the understanding that things don't ultimately exist. But as it says here, existence, appearing as things, and non-existence, their inner reality of emptiness, both are inseparable in entity of one taste. Thus, and so ultimately we need to understand the two truths as a unity. So many scholars have a lot of debate about whether the two truths are one or different or a union or whatever, but that's not important for us. We need to understand the two truths as something that is indivisible or something that is seen as a unity, a union. And so here, when it says existence appearing as things and non-existence, their inner reality of emptiness. So Milerapa is saying then that these appearances which are said to exist, and the nature of those appearances which doesn't exist, that is the true reality of those, that emptiness or lack of true reality, which are not two separate things. They're not established separately, but they are of one entity. It says both are inseparable in entity. That is, they are of one nature and of one taste. Thus, self-knowing and other-knowing are non-existent, and everything is a unification, vast and open. Existence appearing as things. So that's our flower. Those two things are said to be inseparable and of one taste. And this applies to anything that exists. And so the emptiness of the flower, that is not something that's separate from the flower itself. The emptiness of the flower is just the not true existence of the flower, or it is the interdependence of the flower. And so the emptiness of the flower and the appearance of the flower are something which are together as a unity. They're not separate.
안저 시락 님보고 나는 족동만이 동만이 조소 조도 동만이 이마이나 동말래자 조기 마이노 세나 사무 집절송해요. 빼빼야 할래야는 저 게이체 뭐 이마데.
And so then whatever appears doesn't truly exist. So that not true existence of the appearance is the emptiness of that thing itself. And so the and the not true existence or the emptiness of the flower is appearing. And that's what's called the fourfold emptiness and appearance, which is taught in the Heart Sutra, where it says, form is empty, emptiness form. Form is not other than emptiness. Emptiness is not other than form.
그때 제한적으로 다 매도 그 대만이 여왕나라서 이어봐 근접도 유대바 그 매도 대당 아니 동담발라 매바 동담발라 매도도 란지 마로바 그 뚱바니데 다 지리서 다들이나 지리는 와야 매도 그 뚱바지도 매도 코랑 란지 대마 마로바 그 대매도 그 뚱바래와 뒷매도 그 뚱바데 매도를 코랑 로서 접아 그만 넣어야 매도 코랑 뚱이리던 거.
And so the flower, the two truths of the flower, we have the conventionally existing flower and the not true existence of the flower. And that not true existence of the flower is the flower itself. There's no separate emptiness from the flower or not true existence of the flower separate from the conventional flower itself, right?
Is that right? How do you And are the two truths of the flower, are they one or are they something separate? yang ti tung ni se ya de la lo zu jo ba de yo song yang kun ni drama me ba chang de do de ni je je mo chi ni song ye na wa ten de lo ba me ba da tung ba khelin ta go wa ni na ji so son jin ba de ji da da dong to bo gong ba to ba mi song ye na wa tin jen de ron jong wa ka na wa de da tung ba khelin ta wa de tung ba de ni na ji so so de zen song wa yin ba ye na de ni san ji ji gong ba ta to ba de to to yo ma li 근데 남제 린조메바 찍혔도 세대 남제 처랑기 디 군접 여바 그 주당 donna동바 그 주의 린조메바 찍혔도 니시 요진 진당 그 얘는 세나다 내만이 되다 란진저 저바 메바 아니 당당와도 동바데 진종의 낭용과 왔다 된지지 고터바 이마 얘나 대세 따우 공바 조바라 세때네 대 디체나 된데라고 저 고와지 더바 얘나 samo 동반이 고와야 한다고 차거든요. 근데 똑같이 열을 째 더봐야 말이나. 근데 다도 그 samo 동반이가 똑같이 열을 째버리 딱딱히 째물이다. 담보 태양서 그 내만이도 소소하고 다고 여바다 매바 체도 소소하고. 근데 다도 그 내만이 소소도 아니지 좀 매바. 뭐도 되니 냠만이 되니 이와 매바다. 딱대 거는 엄마 고사리.
And so this is really important that you understand that the appearance and the emptiness of that thing are not separate. Because, for example, if you had that understanding that the emptiness was separate, then, for example, with self-grasping, if you thought that self-grasping conventionally existed, but the emptiness of that is something separate, then those two have no connection to one another. That separate emptiness and the conventional existence. So, J. Rinpoche, Tsongkhapa has said that the appearing things, the conventional appearing things, and the ultimate, which is free from all acceptance, as long as you hold those as something separate, you have not realized the ultimate intention of the Buddha. At one point, if those two understandings come together as one, and then as those views come together as one, then you will destroy all objects of grasping. You will destroy all of your grasping at objects, and you will have attained that ultimate realization or that ultimate view. So the point then is that first you have to understand the two views, the two truths as separate. You have to understand, what does it mean that it exists? And what does it mean that it doesn't exist? For what does it exist? For what does it not exist? You need to understand those separately, individually. And then once you understand them on their own, then you can bring them together as an equanimity or as a union. And that's the understanding that we really need to understand. And if you understand that inseparability of the two truths, that understanding itself is the understanding of the middle way philosophy, of the Madhyamaka.
Then that doesn't Milerapa again. Nandam, Tondam, Songyong, Tawa Long the Javains. Now the Tomba Nide, then the year never thought to buy in Bayana, then it Tawan Tarto about the thought of it is in some years.
So I said, if you can understand appearance, emptiness, and their union, then that is the great and vast beauty.
Then the other open Kebai, Namchi Manton, Yishindo, Semji Manton, Sanjendo, Chuji Manton, Chuni Tong, then Ninji Shuzon, Ori, Chuji Manton, Chuni Tong, Tanajana.
The experts who realize it that way do not see consciousness, they see wisdom. They do not see sentient beings, they see Buddhas. They do not see itemized phenomena, they see reality.
And that Kunzu Tinjan the work and you want to shoot at that time. Don't about Ranjin Madupa. What a Deni song you what the thought of my inus, that the top of Kevais. Then now she said, "No, the trouble the Lord over it." Then the Namshi Maton, Yishin and Nello and Tom Togaris. Then it shoot at that time, and it Semji Maton, Sanjin Toms and it, trouble the Semji Maton, and it shoot at that time. Nyambani Sanjagaran in the Tom. Then it Chuji and trouble the Chumanton, Chuni Tom Tamba and Nello Tom the Tom Togaris.
And so then, the experts who realize it in that way, that is, the experts who is that the two truths and the union of those two truths, that is that conventionally things exist, but that ultimately they do not exist, those who realize that as a union are the experts. And those experts do not see consciousness. Consciousness here is meaning a mistaken mind or a confused mind. They see wisdom. And they do not see mistaken beings. They see all equanimity, they see them all as Buddhahood. And they do not see itemized phenomena, that is, they do not see things as ordinary, but they see the nature of those things, that is, they see reality.
Telling Ninji shows on this and that you did that time, and it shirap Samotum Mani de Tang, and it time Hindi Chimbo. Didn't you touch his own to Jubaki, and it did Tom the Tone, and that than the Salangama Tatuna Tatu. Topdam Manjik, Zona so, Sanjay and the Kaim, but Norwood and Chodanjo. They Namjo Mai, Tote what that in somebody.
And so then it says, compassions drawn forth from that is what the good qualities of the Buddhas are. The strengths, fearlessnesses, retentions, and so on, originating in the manner of a precious jewel. That for me, the yogin, is the measure of my realization. So from that wisdom draws great compassion, and with the union of that method in wisdom, that is the method of great emptiness and the wisdom of emptiness, the method of great compassion and the wisdom of great emptiness, then come all the good qualities of the Buddha, the strengths, fearlessnesses, retentions, and so on. That's
that they get Milerapa Congo and it top set that then in some years.
And Milerapa is saying that is the measure of his realization.
Chindanso, London Nalam, the Chusamo Vejam, Pendani, Aberai, Jakan, Keba Vejam, Lumbotin, the Junior of Wajana, Singing Narin Jayita, Garden, Gashi Garden, Yosin, the Dum Tibet, Rovanjur, somebody.
You troublesome gods and ghosts assembled heard profound dharma, but it was just evanescent sound in the kingdom of Abira. The clever ones outsmart the stupid ones. The foxes roaming in the charnel grounds are scared and frightened by the lion's roar. If there are some fortunate ones here, they will be liberated through hearing this, although humans have taken joy in. Altogether, humans have taken delight in, taken joy in, been pleased with me, sudden victory.
So go to Tolejaris in that day. That doesn't matter about the turn chain like Shilin and go to Tindy
La.
That the end of that is turn chain like Ya Shushabaki, what that did Lena Mason Shabaki, Omatangote,
And so up to here, then that is the conclusion of the spiritual song, which was the answer to the question of these Tsering goddesses.
Goes on. Hello. 다들 고소는 어떤 대신 두두제 절차는 처음으로
So that is the conclusion then of these explanation of these points, that we have gone through the key points without needing to go through every single word, because we don't have the time to go through every single word. And together with what we've said here, all the key points of this, together with the teachings on those logical reasonings of the middle way, then I think that that's a good conclusion that we can understand from what we've gone through now. Let's look into it.
대답 동시에 어쨌든 산제지셔는 추주공부 제적제도 진이제 소마 대답한데 더자다 그 롱어다 돈은 특관하소도 때문에 인지 다독 라나데니다 나용서 산제 그 추주공부당 이제 특관하소가 가르쳐 소마 임바yen 얘는 다독 제살라 다적마도가 그 말이지. 다든 다독 제소한 다독 도자 지고도 가르치는 주님 마주가 내로 사모동만 이되지. 대인로 집에 majority 다 당봉아서 시고 그랬지. 대르지 롱다 로버트서 나서 보면서 투산세. 대시 살바가 요래 양 시바장 그 저렇고 말이지. 대다 냠슬랑 공제 냠슬린 거 그랬지. 람장면도 저기 대로 람장 뭐 동반이다 닝지 성적이 안나서 넘버 산제의 취지 님본다고 때 다 사모동반이 땅 아니 제 탐닝지 전부 어다 대니 보인 말이 닝지 성적이 람저 드처 삼점 맞아봤지 니제 요장 도서지 되는 탑시 성적관 탑시 성적관 양의 덴바니 이야기도 시고 그리 진짜로.
And so then, having taught that way, that in that Doha, he explained the meanings involved. Generally speaking, all teachings of the 84,000-fold Dharma heap given by the teacher, the Buddha, was always given in the form of various vehicles in order to confirm the type of mind of the persons being tamed. Nevertheless, there is nothing else there is nothing else except for the one place led to by the ultimate path. The single destination is the uncontrived Dharmata. So, all of the various teachings given by the Buddha, there is only one ultimate object of realization, or one ultimate truth. That ultimate truth is the profound truth of emptiness. And so it says here then, understanding what it is like does not bring liberation. So in the beginning, we have to understand those teachings by way of scripture and logic and so on through our hearing and contemplation. But just understanding itself will not bring us to liberation. We have to put that into practice. And so then it says, understanding what it is like does not bring liberation. It has to be manifested through training on the path. In regard to that, what the path is, it is the unification of emptiness and compassion. The essence of the path of Buddhism is profound emptiness with the method of great compassion. And so there are inconceivably many ways to traverse the path, yet, if they are reduced down to their essence, they are the unification of upaya and prajna, that is, method and wisdom, or the two truths made inseparable. So please do that. Lasso?
어떤 대니데 나서 산지의 추지 풍부 이제저 제체 제동의 송샤과 참하게 님보 저 두샤와 임바티 얘는 대니 끝나는 다와 임바래.
And so the essence of all of the 84,000 peaks of Dharma is contained within what's called emptiness with the essence of compassion.
근데 닝제 제모제 제거와 임바예나 당한서 그 동번이데 대해서 또 말하바 임바예나 닝제 제모제 제트고 근데 다른 남주인 나서 그다 닝제 세야데 근데 밀한테 강한테 대반도 당 아니 지 무서게 지 동한용 대바서 닝제 세 미조온다고 당 아니 지 나산다고 당 근데 강한 첨보 좀 제대바다 지 나서 그 선선도 근데 닝제 제한도 된 닝제 첨보를 뭐도 다 닝제 가자 카실로만 비치해요. 당에서 닝제 제도 강력제로 제거를 했는데 감성 코가 그 생기 참만의 닝제 제거고요. 근데 동할성 거는 거서 그 닝제도 동할 그 동할라마도 그 닝제 제마도 동할 그 동한 체대가 그 생기 제도 닝제 제해요. 당아서 그 닝제 첨부 잡고 제토고 봐야는 차반도지 그 동한용 대박이 생기 참만의 닝제 제거도. 되는데 메도드 데먼젠데 바가 간자제 여바이나 되는 닝지제 토바이나 다 닝지 전부 제 토거래 되는 생기 참만의 닝지제 토바도 다다 메도도 닝지온도 메도 지본도 메도데 야본도 되는 덴바 친데 바게 간자제 너서 닝지제 그 말. 대 가르신 딜로도 너서 그 체만이데 데먼이도 정도 여러분 다 뚱니제 또 용마이나 뚱니 전부제 또 용마이마이나 내 심지 대한 프로젝트 닝지 단디 메도드 덴바 트바 메바 그 덴바 트바는제 되네 델라티는 메도 델라다지 차당 로제 대가 단달라 메바다 쪼르바다 칼레 몽부자 샤타 되나 동남 말람나지 그 갑데 잡나지 레샤 삼바기 닌제 전부 직지 제거부리다 선지 참만의 닌제 제거는 되지 제도 대인도 다 대제거는 동이 델라 대서 나랑 소지 상원제 동토 동이를 대서 그 지다 공리지 박차지 요 마토크 빠르게 제제야도 제 메시바노 렌도 남진로 되는 거서 그때 대단히 그 라진도 레상으로 가다 내 메도드 데마토가 렌도 다 때문에도 야보지도 뭔가 토고도 다 메도는 삼제를 제로 제대로 돼서 항상 그 남진 그 남진 그 로직대 라진 그 로나오지 되지 거대요 대인도다 닝지 전부지 제거는 다 동반이 또 고여래 양 동반이 또 고와이마이는 닝지 그 도리 고여래 대인도 다 동이 있어야 돼 나서 너무 산제바다 뻔마시 바다 투모 많이 받치지 차리 다들이 저당기 따따다 닝지대 다 나서 출로 참아는 열어봐다 미주 제는 닝지지야 돼 출로 참아 끝나는 동안 아니 출로 캐멀리면서 소리 열어봐다 미제 가만 되대요 코샤자 때문에 로바지 고도 삼바데 미zam모 참아는 열 근데 나도 지금 투모 많이 받는 뭐 산지 바가 투모 많이 받게 닝지 차트래요 당근에 그 특바 첨보가 나는 시샤고 닝지데 제고는 반디 나는 시바겠다 동할그 동할 아니 저와그 동할 단 저와그 동할 그 세는 뻔나 다단 토리 라는데 대박 생기대서 닝지 제 더보는 거죠 다 딘디지 다 동이 돼서 또 말하나 라이어그 롱주 대화 용데 대화 돼서 닝지 하면도 그런 거서 닝지 제저도 지금 미조온다고 강한 대박 닝지 제 그러면 무수본다고 닝지 하면도 당근에 추내로 그 동이 그 왕도세 용화이나 니가 동아이 받지 버린다 근데 참아도 닝지 제 거여스 어때인데 동이 세야데 닝지 전부지 제 거나요 아니 그래서 동이 냥이세야 동이로 거기서야 돼서 동의를 고와차야. 어떻게서 개체문인 거죠.
And so, in order to generate great compassion, we have to have some understanding of emptiness. Because, the kind of compassion that we have now is the kind of compassion for beings that we directly see having some suffering. Some sad or impoverished people having great kind of difficulties in their lives, we have some kind of emotion towards that, or some kind of emotional compassion towards them. But that itself is not great compassion. So what is great compassion? Great compassion is focused on all sentient beings in all three realms of samsara. Right now, we're only focused on beings which are experiencing what we call the suffering of suffering. But we need to be able to have compassion for all beings who are experiencing the what's called the suffering of conditioned reality or conditioned existence. And so we need to be able to have great compassion for any being who sees that flower as truly existing. And so that is great compassion. Because if you have the grasping towards seeing that flower as true, first of all, we don't see that as a type of suffering. And we don't have compassion for a person who sees that flower as true because we just think, well, of course it's true because we accept our ordinary perception as something which sees things as being real. We see our ordinary perception as a valid seer or a valid cognizer. And so we don't see that someone grasping that flower as something true as a problem or as a suffering. So we don't have compassion for them. But if someone has that grasping that the flower is true, then in reaction to the grasping of the true reality of the flower, they're going to have a arising of afflictions of attachment, aversion, and so on. And as a response to those emotions or those afflictions that arise, then they're going to engage in various deeds in order to attain or remove or whatever in terms of that flower. And so there is an associated suffering for that. And we would, if someone had realized emptiness, then they would see that those people are grasping a flower as being truly existing, which doesn't truly exist. And as a result of that, then they encounter all these various difficulties arising of afflictions and so on. And we would have compassion that they are working very hard and having difficulties about something that's just like a mere dream. And so we need to, in order to have great compassion, we can't do it without some understanding and familiarity with emptiness. And so if we don't have an understanding of emptiness, then we're just going to think, oh yeah, this flower is beautiful and it's really good and I want it. And we just think that kind of mind is like just natural. That's just our ordinary mind, and that's fine. But if we need to generate great compassion, then we need to understand that emptiness. And in order to realize emptiness as well, then we also need compassion as a helper in order to attain that realization of great emptiness. So general compassion is something that is shared by all religions, and even people who are not religious, just any good people, have compassion towards people encountering suffering, people who are having great difficulties. But if you want to have great compassion, then you need to have compassion for beings who are not only experiencing the suffering of suffering, but also the suffering of change, like the suffering of beings who are in the God realms. So the beings in the God realms, we ordinarily would think that someone in the God realms is having a very pleasant reality, a very pleasant existence, and we would never have compassion for them, just like we would not have compassion for people who are wealthy, because we don't directly see that as suffering. But actually the suffering is equal. And so in order then to generate great compassion, the real particular compassion, which is a specific type of compassion to Buddhism, then we have to understand, we have to study emptiness and gain some real understanding of emptiness. And so of all of the teachings of the path, the unimaginable methods of the path of the Buddha towards liberation and omniscience, if we contain all of those or condense all of those, they're all contained within the profound wisdom of emptiness and the method of great compassion and the union of the two truths. And so then he instructed them in those words, and Tashi Tseringma and the others, the world with its gods, men, asuras, and Gandharvas rejoice, truly praising what the great Jetsun had said. That completes the Doha of the view of the great Jetsun, Laughing Vajra, named an authentic expression of the middle way. And that concludes the explanation of this text.
Tene chu jadang chu la yaga duha se yaw mari te yena chu gei chi chu tezong nga so ki drabya de gei chi mo re tene da sanje ka chu chu pongbu jeche jadang mambo chi song yo re pananda mando ya kora jaya ya sa pu ya cheba mbra ya da tende da gewa mambo chi ndowa yena ya gewa ka nyingbo ndawo te tan dina ni somba na yi yana chi punjo denpa da danda denpa ni nyamsa na ya yana ne chik tende ta samotongpa ni ta nyingje chenpo te ta chik ta chuka nyingbo dao te tende la chali yori penna meche yinpa yana ta soko wangbo dao te penna ta nga zo ngowa yang kei chenpo de lakwa yang kei chenpo de yana chama yang kei chenpo de nawa yana te ta sokzang dao te ta samotongpa ni ta nga ne chik nyingje chenpo de re wata tende 디 나서 그치다 가르세 추지 drop college job 차와 그 요가 되면서 그때 기치 휴트서 그때는 나서 그때 제가 내가 로자세에 기치 모델샤 그 참만 투지체 근데 저한테는 그래서 이게 나서 그냥 나게 이제 나서 그때서 고통난 상황들 뒤 탑식 때문에 다 강직 답되는 것을 되는 시 number 2 pe ko o cha som tu ji chi te tna ja tne tare nga so chwa te se yu som te de kam kha shi nga so jadang tu su jo som nga so kam kha shi chwa li ja nan ta los.
And so that's the end of this teaching then. And I feel like all of you have gained some good understanding about the two truths and about the middle way. And that made me very happy. So thank you to everyone. And ordinarily, it's not as if there are good or bad Dharma practices, but we have just accomplished something which is one of the most important. So of all of the 80,000 different methods of Dharma, the Buddha taught a great many things, like reciting texts, circumambulating buildings, prostrating, and so on. Many different virtuous practices. But really what was just taught here is really the essence of that, this path of profound emptiness and the method of great compassion and the two truths of the conventional and ultimate truth. And this is like, the heart, the life force of a human being. Of course, all of their various limbs and all of their body parts are important, but the most important is their life force. And similarly, the very most important of these Dharma teachings is the teachings of the profound emptiness and great compassion. And we have just accomplished these teachings on these most important essential teachings. And so I'm very happy. Thank you to everyone. And generally, we have run out of time, but I know there are some questions, so we can still take a few minutes for some questions. So if you have any questions, go ahead and ask. But if you have to ask a question in English, you need to, I don't know how we're going to do it because I won't be able to hear you probably.
A
lot of people asking questions with both hands raised. Yeah.
Okay, Justin. There are inconceivably many ways to traverse the path, so that's the 84,000 teachings, and certainly we have a lot of practices and pujas and meditation methods. And what is it different for everybody, or can you recommend the best meditation to recognize ultimate truth?
Da jetang sanjig da chik chu drupe tap da jeju si tong la so badani chi namana so den yoresa. Ani chi gom jaya tang choga donya tang da chik dramandra ma bu yores. Da mi re ne an chik susu chik dendam dem toya ki tap den chik susu la da chik yapo tang yaga yadu da chik rebes da na so le chik pena nga draw chik le an chik zochin draw chik kom moran le an chakchin draw chik kom shemba draw chik dogi ko draw chik kom le an mi re le an tap men draw chik den yaga tang do draw chik rebes and so le an mixe ge an chik tap kare gong ko res
tate chunjo gnan song na yele yenlan da tambe na tbe shirap dong song yule te ha ja ke che mole pen churam song ya gom ja ya samde jimba ta chunju chama na zon damba dong na da kora jan na da na zo melo ja na da ta ge je zo gom na da tate muyur da kare ri sina tbe shirap dong song sina samu dong ba ni ga tan da na te 뒤단다도 somos yo dice te koya ta haja ke che moreda manzo pena kora jamna sa puna damba tona la gonna choga tona taten tato ko muyonda ote kalesina samutung bani toba ga tanada roto ko yuri ina da tambe de anjar do be mo zo ma de ma je de ganjo be gonje gonja damba zamgen lanan jin tuzor la ye chen da ba te yin da ge tu so lo ombe da ro samaya man ba la yam be da ro ba de dan ro me ba wa ro me ba wa ro me ba wa so wa de den da yin da ba ma de me
So I'm going to bestow the empowerment of Akshobhya. So just like I said previously, whatever virtuous practice you're engaging in, whether it be meditating, reciting texts, prostrations, circumambulations, anything, any virtuous practice needs to be sealed with these three excellences. And if we develop a very good motivation, and with that good motivation accomplish such virtues, then those become what is referred to as pure virtues. And the results of such virtues are unimaginably great. But if we have a non-virtuous motivation, which is motivated by attachment, aversion, or ignorance, then whatever that we do with that, even if the action itself is seemingly virtuous, it becomes non-virtuous because it is motivated by such a negative mind state. So virtue or non-virtue relies upon the intention of virtue or non-virtue, not upon the outer appearance of virtue or non-virtue. So if something is motivated by virtue, if something is motivated by a virtuous attitude, then the action itself becomes virtuous. And if it's motivated by a non-virtuous attitude or motivation, then the action is non-virtuous. And so virtue or non-virtue is not primarily established upon the external action, but is mainly based upon the internal mental state. And so these days in the West, there are many people who are engaging in meditation, but what is their motivation for doing that? Mainly for many of them, it's for some kind of health benefit or for bringing some peace and relaxation to their minds. And that kind of meditation, the meditation which is done for health and physical or mental peace and so on, is not the virtue spoken of in Buddhism that becomes a cause for liberation.
다시는 다 그런 그 무효되라 이제 전다다 바보도 지 소소기 마 리셈기 어디 됐다나 감자가 여러 되는지 이메일이 되네 이렇게 전디 소소기 아니지 되지 같은 자마도 가게 타바 그 되는 저 차요 양 되게 카시 이메일이나 양 되는 건 소바다 양은 나서 남바 주바 뭐부터 거주 양 되게 그런 사조도 생각 건난 Teniba gom javi ma yindu, ti gewa ti, teni lisem ki liukun chwe ti indang, sem ki ti xewa la soba la pen yore la, ti ini gom ti gewa la chaga yore, ti gewa ti, teni taba da tangi ti ma ki junyi la yang, ani teni joya yoba yima li, teni yung yore.
And the reason is because their motivation is just for the kind of health and well-being of their body and minds in this lifetime. And so they will gain that benefit, but this will not become the virtuous cause of liberation. And there are also many in the West, many Westerners who are practicing meditation motivated by bodhicitta. And that meditation will not only benefit their health in terms of their body and mind, peace of mind and health to body, but will also become that virtue, which is the cause of liberation and omniscience. And so when the lamas are giving Dharma teachings, they always start the teaching reminding us to to generate the correct motivation. And because it's so important, then they are always reminding us of that. And so we're all going to receive this empowerment with the motivation of bodhicitta.
The one say a day, Sana Doji Tabada, Shubak go. And Sana Doji Tabakima, Bombadina, then once in the television, then the Jadan once a day, and let low young.
And so what we call empowerment then is the gate of entry into the Vajrayana teachings, into the Vajrayana is the giving of the vows of the Vajrayana, and it's not something that is easily done or easily accepted. So in the actual tantras, the text of the Buddha, then they have like a in the beginning one is given empowerment, and then based on that, then they're giving the introduction and instructions in creation and completion practices to actually put the meaning of that empowerment into practice. So the most important thing in an empowerment is that you are introduced to the stages of practice and given the vows of tantric practice.
그때 지당 세바 임바이나 답원 세야돼서 아니 당부 나도 마 운동기 되는 나도 이제 다 nimjong san nimjong lo sanjo san 되는 동이 그 따와 좀 차상 냠저 랑찬 되는 상하다 쇼 되는 상하다 토마 쇼도 다 원쇼 뒤 원쇼 샤와기 나 예단 가르가 원 이메이나 대쇼 뒤 예단 대다티나 되는 제름도 조름도 아니 마냠선이 그다지 좀더지나 되는 로고야지 차야게.
So generally, the stages that one would practice is that first, one would practice and learn about the kind of sutra teachings of renunciation, bodhicitta, and the view of emptiness, and practice those. And having already practiced those, then one would finally receive an empowerment, and then one would practice creation and completion based in the whichever deity, whichever yidam that one had received that empowerment in. So that's the general kind of stages of practice that are usually done. But these days, many people, without having done any kind of preliminaries of refuge, bodhicitta, renunciation, emptiness, and so on, without doing any of that, receive empowerments, and there are many people giving empowerments to people who have not done any of these preliminaries. And if you look at the real kind of history and the real tradition of the Tantras, I don't think that's very good. Yeah, it doesn't seem like it's very good.
Yeah. then jahan Khenpo Tsulnam then one get chogando down one kurando logic down one kurwa get tap chogando sharam moment then the tap ben nyamne ji se then one then have shot lama til tin so ki kaleti nyam so den go yadam kaleti nyam so lama yina ti one the core one the show then the one the show and then the yadam de ma nyam so den tin ji na ya Lagward anything like a jog to tinsel key when as a one and one year, but then there was some lamic and 1 year. The new 1 year and then Tama Pawanga Sovate, so and it's my children, then the Tamu Pawang de course. The Pawang the court Savaga Yola, and the Pando Chiram the Chatanyani the Chatan said. The Chiram the Yami the Chatan said Savaga Yola, and then Zoram Yamsadin Zoram Yamsad. Ring Makabla, and then when Chudongo, the Saint Jacob Jordan, Salondo, Lasso Van Yamsling Makabla, then the Sherwanda, Saman Lasso, but in the one the court. Then it did Jordan, the Chatham, Yamsalan Tower Gajola, then it done Jizo King, Jidan down, Saint Jacob Jordan to the Yamsalan Tower Gajola, Semika Jordan, the Sentinel, some of money, then a going about capture. Then one jet is about so one day. I'm sure. Then a tenders and a yams and then Rodan Monchi denudation.
So if you look at the Buddhism first spread in India, and if you look at the kind of history of Buddhism in India and the time when the ancient Indian masters and the histories of the ancient Indian masters, they didn't give a lot of empowerments. If you look at the teachings and the texts of the ancient Indian scholars, then and look at the way that they practiced, they were not giving a lot of empowerments. If they had a student who was practicing, then they would eventually give them the particular empowerment for the particular deity that they were actually going to practice. And generally there are 4 empowerments which are given, and in a lot of the histories of these ancient Indian accomplished masters, then, for example, they would just give the first empowerment, the base empowerment alone, just that, which is the empowerment into the creation stage to their student, and then the student would go off after only receiving the first empowerment and practice the creation stage until they had finished the practice that they were given, and then come back, and only then would they come back and receive, for example, the completion stage practices, which are in 2 sections. So the completion stage practices with characteristics, which are like, for example, in the 6 yogas of Milerapa, the winds and channels practices. So then they would receive like the wisdom empowerment and secret empowerment, and go off and just practice that. And when they're done with that, then they would come back and finally receive the 4th empowerment into the completion stage without any characteristics, which is the meditation on the true nature of mind. That's it.
That's Sanjay song that bought the Jalan to your conjures. That then on a man, Chishi the Sota, Tony go Kortan, Sancho the Sango Kortan, and it's Sabanda Hindi down, and it then by jealous of what Mang Chishi the Tindi song Chavo Matopaki, and it's one keep, I did one with Chogano down, one go Korte, Sanjay the song now, Mambuchum though. The Karisina to pick up the Sanjay the Sot, the me, Nuno, Yaminkin Matopaki. Me time on the Tinichi Mogo was Zedna, then Sanjay you brought it in Manawa in Bade. Tinichi in the Sanjay song now, Paja want to Nunyonji, Mang Chipito, Tinichi de Nazochi, Tuni go Portan, Sanjo go San go Portan, what Tinichi Saba the Jackie of Chu, Tinichi had a way.
And so if you look at the Kangyur, which is the collected words of the Buddha, most of the teachings in there are about emptiness, compassion, the 4 noble truths, the vast and profound teachings is what they're referred to. But if you look at that, there are not very many empowerment rituals, because at the time that the Buddha was teaching, he saw that not everyone needed these empowerments. Not everyone would really put them into practice. So they were only given to the very few people who were really going to put them in practice, and not given to everyone. And so the primary subject of the Buddha's teachings, and what is mostly found in the collected works of the Buddha, are these teachings on compassion, emptiness, bodhicitta, and the 4 noble truths, and so on.
That is John Gumbo Lodop Dam, and that the Tommy Yazela Sobaki, that Nazita in Pendok the Soki, that the Soka Sumbam to Soya, Joyoriza, the Soka Lord Junam Tatas and G. Deva Mayana, Shara one the Nistil Mambuchi Court de Batang, and it in the Sum to Soka now, she won Yakam Bushok de Batinikan, Giam.
And if we look at the great scholars of Nalanda University, such as Nagarjuna and the Sangha, their collected works still exist. And if you look at their histories, and if you look at their actual texts that they wrote, there are not very many empowerment rituals or texts on the tantras. There are not a great number of them in their collected works or historical accounts.
That Pelo Badan, Narobala Soba, the Jag to Chintasoki, Young Teso Kuchin Namtardan, and it is Sumbum Teso the Manji and Wayne. Yachiwa Chicken, but it one court, Shirati Sando Nanchavatan, Sierra Mamuja Yudevata, and Meva.
And similarly, if you look at the accomplished siddhas of India, such as Tilopa and Naropa, and look at their collected works and their biographical accounts, they also did not bestow a great number of empowerments.
용라 기니 참아는 진리지 사는 가져 매바이 말이.
And so in the noble land of India, the empowerments were just given to a single student when they were ready to practice that. And they were not given, as they are these days, as just a ritualistic thing that's given out to many people.
Zogla Kangdang, the Samin Chimbala Soba, the Winter the Zola, that man Yamsali was a cobbler, then this summer, they want to the Koromato Baki, Namji, Tadatu Narazona Yinki, then they want to take chapter down, you rather, then the Channel Makoro, the Jesha. Then the man Chishi de la Nichita, Nazo, Karse. Sana ke judan ani tin do tso na ti tusan ba ani ti de ne nyane ni da ti zonju na ma do ba ki ani ti shara sama ani ti wang de na ani zonju na cha ba de ta cha me ba ma de.
And then even when the Dharma spread to Tibet in the beginning with with the Khenpo, the Lopun, and the Dharma King. At that time, Guru Rinpoche as well just had his 25 close disciples and would bestow empowerments at Samye, at the temple as well as Samye Chimbu in the solitary retreat places, and again, just to practitioners when it was time for them to practice. And it was not as if today when there were empowerments given and advertisements made and empowerments given to a great number of people. So it was only given to people who were specifically studying the sutras and tantras and putting them into practice in a specific way, and not given out just generally.
Milerapa la soba la one kashi mado baka pacha na yuju mari. Teka namtam nangsa so jiya mado. Kongi toma ki chi shi te sola ani chi ti yadam ki yude te so nyani manang ukman la. Tene te wang te kor. Tene te suma nyamsa lang na tindi de lo mato. Namjun yang chi ti tabu wang ki kor. Tene te yu xie, che xie. Tene te la nyani na. Tene te la choba to. What are the ladies on Madobaki? And it is the Tadasheba Nanjin, Namjin, Namtarnan, the Sola Wang, Mamboko, Dea Tang, and then it is in the Kong Sumbam, the Sola, and it is Wangi, Yakambo, you there, Chiga Mebay Mali, and Mambo Mebadi, then Pachichiwaris.
And if we again turn our attention then more specifically to the Kagyu tradition, and we think of the great Lotsawa Marpak, then when he would give just a few, if we look at the historical accounts and biographies, only gave a few empowerments to Milerapa and to some of his very close students, but otherwise also did not give a great number of empowerments, and just gave the important ones to a disciple before they were ready to practice a particular deity, a particular yidam. And so they would give the empowerment, the practitioner would receive the teaching and the empowerment, put it into practice, and then based on that, attain accomplishment. But otherwise, just as we said before, if we look into the collected works and the historical accounts, they were not giving a great number of empowerments, and also even in their collected works, there's not a great number of empowerment texts and so on.
just in charge. The Milerapa in somebody by in a young, not come the Lama Marba, but then one union model of the Shuya Jumali. Let the net park on the Loma Mambo Jang Yurite, that the soul lion. The Tarikon Shibanaji, Yadam Karin Yansalena Day, when the take that one very new model bucket, and then Namji, one Mamboji court the bucket to the Southern Yamari.
And then if we think about Milerapa, Milerapa is the example that everyone gives. He's the most commonly known person who attained Buddhahood in just one lifetime. And so in the beginning, Milerapa was just an ordinary guy, actually quite a bad guy. And then he entered into the Dharma and studied and practiced, and in one lifetime was able to attain Buddhahood. And that's something that, people generally believe. People understand and believe that. And if we think about him as well, then he only received a few empowerments from Marpa. And then to his students also, he had many students. And as well, just when his student was ready to practice a particular yinam, he would give them just the empowerment for that practice, and only gave just quite a few empowerments, and otherwise did not give out these large-scale empowerments or large number of empowerments.
Tambo Samaga Dombale the one show. The net Samaga, Yadam Kare, Yamsle Bayena, they won the shot and a man Yamin said the Omadobaki, and the Sharaki, Yuraki, Chadaji in the one, then that's Salim by Yisari.
And similarly, if we think of Jegampopa or Pamodrupa or Dusun Kemba, all of the great masters of the Kagyapa of the past were the same. They would first receive their vows and their empowerment of the particular Yidam deity that they were going to practice and just put that into practice, but did not receive or give a great number of empowerments just to the public.
That year, so Chita one the somehow the Dombalan down, and it is somehow came on Yanni to cheat the one call. Mato then Namji, and it's also the Chita, Chini, Tsundo, then any done, don't longer than what is so non you. Hanaji, that rope below one road in that Jaya just some Tsu, Sumbam to solo one joke to some way of Marilla, and they come away with Pacha one of Bushio Marilla, one of 9 years. That pick up so that one to some caresses one say at the Jadan and you want the Sabo, the Sabo Yamanaji, Konabaki and Kichimunan. Then some one say at the Sachin Kichinan, then one Korakia, one New Korea, Shawakia, one New Shuba, then it one Shisha, what is what Sama, Yanik, the one Shisha, what it in charge. Then it you made it. My Jahan Papa, your down book, and Jim Jones, what type of mother could tell Total Mambo, somehow the thing of Total Mambo son your dealer, Rana Jinka, little Keba and Sunday, whichever son your
Dandaki, such a Goma de Dandaki, such a Goma.
Goma Namas in the Taknima Sajapa, the Tema, the Sol Jibo, such a Gomana Mayero.
That's all.
Such a command machine, Tazanka.
That's. And so then also such a Goma was the same. He was really the lord and holder of the tantric teachings, and would only receive or give empowerments for particular practices for someone who was going to practice that. For someone who was really particularly interested in studying and really particularly going to practice. And if we look at the histories as well of the Gelugpa school with Jerumshe, and his two primary disciples then, they also, in their collected works, there are not very many tantric texts. And knowing the profundity and the importance of them, then they acted accordingly and only gave or received empowerments that were important and that were going to be put in practice, and only received them or only gave them for the purpose of putting them into practice. So both in the noble land of India as well as in Tibet, there are a great number of accomplished masters, really, and a great number of really incredible scholars to come about by practicing in this way. And as the times got worse and worse, then there were a great many more people giving empowerments, many people receiving empowerments, and then we got to where we are now. And so then once empowerment has been concluded, then the creation and completion practices that should accompany it have all but disappeared. And so more and more empowerments have been given, but less and less people are becoming accomplished from it. And so there's a great accomplished master of the Kagyu named Gotsamba. Zulatsong Senakarse Varila. From Mambo Zulasong Senakarse.
Wangor Mambo Kolapsan Sena. Tachu Wangor Mambo Koryores. Wang Mambo Jakoryun, Tachu Tanyang Mambo Zuyores.
So he said, a statement from him, he said, have you given many empowerments? Then you've created many broken samayas. And what that means is that by giving out a great number of empowerments, when you give an empowerment, you're giving someone a vow, and if those vows are things that you have to be training in. And a lot of the people who are receiving those empowerments then are receiving those vows, but don't have any idea what the vows are or how to protect them. So they're all breaking their vows. So that's why he said, are you giving a lot of empowerments? Then you're creating a lot of broken vows.
Kongo Tunkor to one pay Mongo Namari. The Yena Kongo Tunkor one the Kichimo Mesita, Kichi Cheshi de Mundo Chishi Kachu de Yen Somodo. That one does take the Manan the minimum for your mother Somodo. Then the minimum one the one temple called the minimum level is. That Yena and Kongo Reva Chishi, Kichi de Mundo Kachu de la Kongi, Reva Jabu song the Guardian did the song there. That Nelo at the child. Nazotum go on Tobayona Mina Michi, that Tobatum go Doma to Song. That then they chew of Bobian than Yami, Gayam Maze, or Mombo Dena. That Nazochi Sanachera, Joala Tomado. Then an answer with Jelly Shiran Prayan Rotan, an answer with Jelly, someone Ninja in Yami. Kichi, Bobian than Yami, the younger Tomato Bagi. And then you want Mombo Court, then this is the Batangi, not a son, but a young Tormado. The Guardian and Jamun, which is in the capital. That one thing was a Luzon of Chatsari. The end that the Kichi did, that come Mundo Gachi the ends on the Nanjin, it is some of the years.
His Holiness the Dalai Lama is always saying when he gives the Kalachakra empowerment, which he gives frequently, that the empowerment isn't all that important. It's the preliminary teachings that he gives before the empowerment that he considers the most important. Because he says, if I don't give an empowerment, not many people are going to show up. So I have to give the empowerment so people come. So then, but my biggest wish is that is for the preliminary teachings to get given. And His Holiness Dalai Lama is always saying that. And so whether we really can receive an empowerment or not, who knows? But just receiving an empowerment, if we don't study and we don't understand anything, isn't really going to be that helpful. What's really important then, what's the most important, is studying and practicing. And so that's why His Holiness is always saying that the most important thing is those preliminary teachings that he gives before the empowerments.
Young Lama later, Loma Jama Kashe Yoris. That covered on Mutukachi the Kadisho. Come on the Kadu go to Losi. That they covered down. Then you make Kashe the Sota Tata Mutukachi shots and one the Ta. The Remon and the Taka will love yours. Then Kashe the Lama later, Loma Jama Yoris something. You could say something.
So one time His Holiness was giving the Kalachakra in the south of India at Drapung Monastery. And as the preliminary teachings, he was going to teach the fundamental verses of the Middle Way by Arya Nagarjuna. And actually the place where Nagarjuna lived and gave that teaching is actually quite close to there. And His Holiness was saying that, his biggest hope or his primary intention in giving the empowerment was to get people to receive the teaching of the fundamental verses of the Middle Way. And so he's joking that he's very clever to trick people into coming and listening to teachings on Nagarjuna's text. And so then some of the lamas that were there were asking, very specifically, like when the preliminary teachings were to finish and when the empowerment was going to start. And so then calling back and forth, and then they would show up right when the teachings were finished and right when the empowerment was about to start. And so it was pretty funny. It's like they're even more clever trying to sneak around.
That's Tene tamu jim do ki lang ge zhumba de song hun de song. Tene sanga ge wang xu cao ge yo la. Tene sanga ge dongba song. Tene di dongba de so sanga ge nyang ne se. Ta dindri se na jyo ge tu san se. Tamu wang gor tene sanga ge jyo de so le je po bian se. Tene di je zo de so le nyang ne se ba yin ba yin na. Tene wang ki ngang zo ji gudong zhao. Wang ge penyong zhao. Wo dindri jing jung yo de. 다 딘디 많이 받기 땅에서 등산난 인기 제 왕들도 조당도 럽선도 자수 많이 많이나 근데 디 왕들 그러면 왕들 톱나 나서로 팬이요나 너효요나 대성리 나와 그래서 가지 왕들 톱 나다 상하고 동바 톱로요 다 상하고 동바 톱서도 동바에서 마송 많이 많이나 다 왕 슈드 팬이요나 다티 왕그 동바 마송나 다 산제도 송샤바기 니바트서 다 여러봐. 그래서 배는 왕시도 다 평요리 사마요리 갈스는 산제가 왕 평요도서 런서 그 이치세 왕시도 평요리 사마여러봐. 다때 요여리 왕도 담지 평요도 요리. 다 얘는 양 왕때 그 냥네에서 맞아봐 임바이나 동바에서 야고 마송바 임바이나 양때 담서는 냥바가 니바 대양 여러봐다. 그 평요여바나니 때 야고 맞는 때 니바인 송요 되는지 인데 다 왕세야 돼 톱던 톱이야 다 망고지 왕 톱 톱세야 돼 깔리 가버리는 거 그래서 왕 톱이다 왕 렌시고 그래 되네 왕 거라고 그 줄라 이상하고 dom바요고 그래 되는 거 저거 왕 주도 아니 저한테도 시고 그래 여기 럼바도서 이거 그래 되는 왕 그래서 저마 왕그 뒤라데 왕그 제도서 마 톱았잖지 왕 톱이 요나미나 대양 태산제리죠 다 왕도 그네다 마 톱아 얘나 뒤나서 그 펜을 요는 너희 대양 태산되지 근데도 왕세야 돼 렐라고 그랬는데 그래서 그 집에 다 렐하시는 거라 저요
And so it's not as if we shouldn't receive empowerments. I don't mean that. Empowerments are very important. But if we're going to receive empowerments, then we need to make sure that they're actually going to be helpful to us, that they're going to help us to be liberated. And that's why first it's really important to go through all of the phases of study and practice of the sutras, and then finally receive an empowerment so that you can keep the actual vows and do the real practices. So if you first start with hearing and contemplation, and then you receive an empowerment, and then you really practice the stages of creation and completion, then you're really making the empowerment meaningful. That's actually, you're fulfilling the purpose of the empowerment, and you actually will attain the benefits of it. But otherwise, just how we're practicing giving empowerments these days, it's really uncertain. It's really doubtful or uncertain whether the receiving the empowerment is actually helpful for you or even possibly harmful. And the reason why that is because if you receive the empowerment, yeah, there's some benefit just to receiving empowerment, but if you do not keep the commitments that were given with the empowerment, then you also incur the faults that are spoken of in terms of not keeping those sacred commitments or samayas. And so, yes, there is benefit just in receiving that empowerment, but also if you receive the empowerment but don't do the practice, do not maintain those sacred commitments of samaya, then there are many faults. So it's also quite difficult to even attain to really receive the empowerment in a real way. You have to actually know how to receive the empowerment. As well, the person giving the empowerment has to have pure samaya, pure vows themselves and the lineage. And so, and you have to know how to receive it. You have to understand the stages of it. And so just sitting in the group with the rest of the people and receiving the sacred substances doesn't really mean that you necessarily receive the empowerment. And so even if you do receive it, as I said before, it's uncertain as to whether it's really helpful for you or not. So that's what I meant when I said receiving empowerment is not just some easy thing. It's not just some basic easy thing. And so, but we really usually think of empowerment, receiving an empowerment, as the easiest thing you can do.
근데 저당 다 매직 왕세리 나는도지 상하도 냠서 레롱어세바기 주트마 멤버세바기 탑제나네 왕스 송여레 되는지 이메인데 다 나서 마 왕슈드 이제 참아게 세다 된 거지 쇼타바 이메이나 다 왕 팽도 배 삼년만 잡았지 담 근데 양상아 냠서 렘바가 까다 토마치 왕지양 마주 탑이 탑매반도 왕지 니벌 요거 왕신의 상하는 다 통만 요거 왕의 양고 저거예요. 근데 제 왕대 저단 제 왕대 드리지 말에 무슨 배용량 삼점 잡아요 대봐. 저단 왕양 나랑 좀 쇼크 받지 드리지 차도요. 근데 얘네야 왕 쉬어야 되는데 이제 왕 쉬어서 그요 아니 쉬어보 라니 그 차지. 근데 이제 왕기다 뭐냐 그지 왕만 랜당 근데 왕랑 차와가 갑자기 왕기 왕동그 냠니 다 드속배는 시바가 기친 자신 기친세는 드립 좀 거예요. 다 드립 맞잖아. 또다 왕세야 다 사주 이말에 왕 라만도 어제나 왕나야 저 레사주 되는 거. 취시에 드립에 다 상어당 계자시 망보고도 빼죠. 망보고도 다 왕 초가져서 초가다 록사든 나 초나지 말로 쇼도 되오리디 다 왕숑게서 냥네서 맞아봐 임바이는 왕 쇼도 집어도 왕의 평양에 여부송야 요리 근데 왕의 신하가 망보 마터야 요리 레라운도 레라우송자든 맞아라 야 좀래양 레라우 맞고 되게 임바이데 저다 왕신의 팀이 말이스.
And so empowerment is called a ripened empowerment. And so what that does then is it ripens the disciple's mind as to make them a proper vessel for the practice. And when you receive the empowerment, then you need to receive it appropriately. And if you receive it in a proper way, then there are really unimaginably great benefits. So it's something that in order to engage in tantric or Vajrayana practice, you have to receive it. It is referred to as the gate of entry into the Vajrayana teachings. And in order to receive that then, the person who's giving the empowerment, the person who's receiving the empowerment as well, have to fulfill certain conditions. They also have to know how to receive an empowerment, and once they have received the empowerment, how to put that into practice. So this is all stuff that we need to see and hold as being very important. And otherwise, often empowerments are thought of as just something very basic or easy. And you can just sit around and listen to the ritual and talk and not do anything and just listen, and you get to receive some blessings and you hear about all these benefits, and we think that it's really easy. And so these days, many empowerments that are given are really just kind of encouragements to people, encouraging them into virtuous activity. But it's pretty difficult to say that they are authentic empowerments as they are described in the genuine tantric texts. They really just become kind of a blessing. And so the word for empowerment in Sanskrit, in Indian language, is abhisheka. And when we translate directly that word into Tibetan, it has two meanings. One, which is to pour, like to pour something into something else, and then also to cast away. And so if we receive this empowerment, then how is that related to these two terms of pouring and casting out? So by receiving the empowerment, all of our obscurations are cast out or are abandoned. And the pouring then refers to the pouring in of the blessings, which are these seeds of the enlightenment of the Buddha, the mental imprints of that attainment of omniscience of the Buddha. And so that is the function of an empowerment, is to pour and to cast out.
근데 양 상하 그 주라 아니 다야당 상하 그 주그 냠내도 세 초요 딱 마왕的 토바이마이나 되는 안 소지 상하 그 냠내시 세발로 왕왕 상하 그 주티니로 왕왕 다 된지지 이마인데 다티 태가 그지 다다 보게 그때는 왕센데 야부지 조시요.
And so then the word in Tibetan literally means power or empowered. And so what that means then is that this word also is a very good translation. It works very well because if you have not received an empowerment, then you are not allowed to look at or read tantric texts, nor are you allowed to practice any tantric practice. But once you have received it, then you are allowed to study the texts as well as put them into practice.
That's 도망가서 아니 무조바기다 또런데 이말에 된지지 이말인데 도망이 들어가면 제랑 조금 물라 근데 또 본당 아니 제 예당나 근데 이 왕대마 고도서 아니 대당 아니 왕거로는 하나 되네 잠을 좀 받아서 만들어 해야 돼 근데 왕다 근데 잠도 그 동bat에서 만 난도 소르신 소르한테 봐 이말에 소르한테 보여요 도망.
And so first, in this empowerment, which is called the Torma empowerment of Akshobhya, then first you have to visualize in the space in front of you the master bestowing the empowerment as well as all of the Yidam deities. And you first take refuge and then supplicate them to bestow the empowerment.
근데 상하 그 왕다 상조 그 선 아니 잡선도 동바도 만난 그 소르세나 딱 나도데 되니 아니 된데를 삼아 땅네 근데 천데 지도 나와르시.
And so then what are we supplicating to the Yidams and to the master? We're supplicating them to bestow upon us the refuge and bodhicitta vows as well as the tantric or the tantric empowerment. So hold that meaning in mind, that that's what you're supplicating for, and then repeat after Genrimshi.
Gachi choda tomba te lobong chuna gongso so sancho chenbu sutemba gumbo chenbo dansa lo danse teni dala zor sancho semjang dala zor sanje chudang genden te japsom dajang dala zor tarba chenbu zhongzhou de gongbu dane yuban zer gongbu dane yuban zar that the yola